Hey, Blynn, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Jeff. Doing well.
Thank you for joining me on Indispensable Appraisers. And the goal of this podcast is to educate, elevate, but most importantly, to bring back enthusiasm to our valuation space. So thank you for joining.
Glad to be here. Excited to chat.
Cool, cool. First up, where in our valuation space are we winning, where we're doing a great job?
So I think to frame it, I have to say that I have probably incorrectly for years thought of industry. What is the industry? And I would think of it at a high level, like the Appraisal Institute is the industry, or these larger groups are the industry, and that they kind of call the shots and we follow in line and march behind, kind of where things are going, that there's not a ton of control. Like sometimes volume's just going to be slow. Sometimes, it's more of like a sitting back and waiting kind of mindset for, just reacting. And there's this moment though where it clicks that it's a lot of individuals that make up an industry. And as far as winning, I think the first win is seeing individuals do some really cool things. Some of them, kind of like this, starting a new podcast, creating content. I'm seeing stuff on YouTube. I use YouTube like I use Google, just searching for things because, one, you're seeing an actual person. But there are appraisers just putting content out there, even if it has very few views, but they're sharing knowledge, blogs. And I think I've, been around long enough to see that there's this correlation that's pretty interesting between, and it's not coincidence, people who are sharing knowledge and trying to build others seem to be more successful than those who are just keeping their nose down and just plowing out reports. And so I think it's cool. I think, we're in obviously a time where data can be shared pretty rapidly across multiple platforms. So it's cool to see. I think it's helpful. Second, I'm just in hearing from chief appraisers, I'm hearing a lot more of a desire and implementing it to some extent of getting rid of the kind of chase to the bottom for the cheapest feed reports. They're really putting emphasis on quality. Part of what we have, one of our arms of our company is an appraisal review company. And, when we're onboarding a new client, we'll talk through kind of what are you needing? What's the scope of what we're trying to lay out? We can do it, super technical. If you're going to do a review yourself, you just kind of want to make sure that everything's in order, kind of what's the scope of, what we're trying to engage here. And I'm hearing more at the higher end that are wanting a lot of feedback for how good of appraisers do we actually have on our panel, and really with the mindset of shaking the dead leaves off the trees. It puts more work on our end, especially if we're doing the communication with the appraiser, because we know we're going to get the shots fired at us when we're just really following through what the client's asking for in their engagement letter, but just holding appraisers accountable. But even within that, I've worked for years where you would, say a client sends over a new engagement letter and it's asking you to do a specific thing. The appraiser stand at my door for 10 minutes complaining about, oh, we got to do this and that. And it's just another thing that's being added. And I think you could have already been done with this one thing they have asked for could have been accomplished in 5 minutes, but we've taken 10 minutes complaining. And yes, it's another extra step. But even like from the example I'm giving most recently of the client who's saying we really want to step up our game, from the appraisal departments, and they were saying I was brought in to elevate the appraisal department to bring it, just a new level. There hasn't been a ton of oversight, so let's make it better. So as we're presenting reports back to her and feedback, her issue with people was not when it wasn't necessarily that the report was deficient in some way. It's that the appraiser wasn't willing to make changes to it. So it's not that it's not even an unwillingness to unwillingness is the wrong word. It's not even that an incompetency. It's that there's no flexibility on your end to change how you've done it for years. And that was what's most important. And those who would not adapt or be willing to at least converse about it, they pulled off their panel. Um, there's an appraiser out of DC who has this mantra. His name's Brian Genter, but he has this mantra where he says, "Tell me a story, don't leave me hanging." And that's what we're seeing, I think, from a client perspective, where they're saying, in your report, more than just throwing out data, tell me what you already know. If you've developed this analysis, write an extra sentence or two that explains to me what you're doing, why you're thinking this. And so that's really our pitch back to these appraisers when we're doing these appraisal reviews. It's like, I don't need you to overhaul this. If you would add a couple of sentences in a couple of places, this would give a lot more clarity and consistency. Client's happy. And but again, I think it's a win from the perspective of when I hear a lot of people saying that they just want the cheapest fee report. I'm sure there are those out there, but I'm hearing more chief appraisers at a national level talking about quality has diminished. They've seen it, and they're doing their part to kind of fight back against that in their institution. And I think it goes back to the mindset where individuals make up the industry, and every individual that's putting in an action to make it better, it's just going to elevate, make things better. So
Great. Yeah, great. That's a great answer. Kind of leads back into the second question. What do you think the biggest challenges are to our vertical space? Is it what you mentioned? Is it resistance to change? Is it resistance of, are they comparing it to what it used to be? What are you seeing as the biggest challenges looking forward?
I think one of the challenges has to be it's got to be isolation, and it's brought on. A lot of it is probably just symptoms of being isolated. So when you sit back with very little context, and maybe you're not talking to a lot of other appraisers or talking to different appraisers, maybe you're locked in with the one or two that you chat with, you're not getting a ton of perspective, and you don't know what you don't know, right? So if I am if I'm observing and seeing, well, the national shops seem to be taking over, the national shops are moving it, but I'm not hearing from banks that, you know what, we would prefer regional people who have, very specific competency in a very specific market at a better level than someone who's coming in from an hour away can do. You wouldn't know that if you're not out talking to people. And then your mindset again becomes that, well, I'm smaller, and it's just is what it is. I'm going to be out of work before too long. I think it's probably a feeling, even if someone's not saying that, or I'm going to get lower fees or less work. I think that there's a quote I love where it's that you can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And so at that point, everything, becomes mindset. I can pivot to address whatever these challenges are. We've heard it said with other thing, from other people, it's, if you don't like your fees, get better clients. I think you hear that and you think, whether I put work into getting my clients, and the thought of having to do that pivoting seems overwhelming. But I think what we found is there are plenty of other clients out there. It may not be from the traditional sources you're used to getting it from. We've just experienced it between banks getting acquired and having to either get to know a new appraisal department, a new coordinator, or even a relationship. If they're just not interested in working with us because they have their own way of doing it, hey, let's start knocking on some more doors. But if you sit back and again really seem isolated, and a big part of that is just a lot of people I talk to just want to keep it by email. I would say you've got email, great, that's base level. Everyone's doing that. Then I would say, well, then there's the phone. Next level, good, a little more personal. And I think, go out to lunch with someone. And even if they won't do that, drop off the donuts in their office. It seems like a sales tactic, which you could argue that it is. But I think not being so isolated and getting out there, hearing what your clients are looking for, they'll tell you. Get in front of someone who's ordering your work, reviewing your work, and you say, what are 3 things I could do better to be 5% better than my competition? You think, I don't have to be 100, I don't have to overhaul my business. I just have to be a little better than the next guy. And I think opportunity comes from it. One of our local appraisal firms here, I've never seen an appraisal shop with a billboard. But recently they put a billboard up, and it's got their whole team up there, good looking picture, and it says something to the effect of, I think we had recent tax reassessment, and it's saying, want to argue your tax value? Call us. It's like, I love that. You're pivoting, saying that may not be my bread and butter, for my business, but hey, in slow times, one, my team sees that I'm putting in effort to drum up business, and two, I just need to supplement until things pick back up, and it may become someone's niche. They get so good at it. There's a not to sound like the sage on the mountain, but there's I read recently that the Chinese word, I believe it's for crisis, it's made up of two parts. It's like danger and opportunity. And you think that even in the middle of whatever, the slowdown that we're experiencing recently, there's still so much opportunity, even with the imminent threat of a lack of work or whatnot. But there's such opportunity within it, and every market's different. Every appraiser has a different skill set and strength. But I think if you're actively pursuing it, instead of, well, it's slow today, like I used to be, I 100% would be, well, my work's done for the day. I'm waiting for a call back on this one. You know what? I think I'm going to go home and pull weeds today. I need to do some stuff around the house. I miss those days in a sense because I had so much more free time. But on the other side, you're really not growing. At that same time, we tell our young people at church all the time, pull out your phone, pull out your screen time, show me how much time you're spending on your phone every day. You're telling me you don't have time to study. You're telling me you don't have time to do whatever, hobbies, or, you're so busy. Look how much screen time you're hitting. So I'd probably argue the same thing here when you're saying, it's slower than I need it to be, or, I just don't have time or whatever. Pull out that phone. See what's distracting you. See if you can nail discipline and time management, you can do just about anything. And again, ton of opportunity out there.
Great. Appreciate that answer. That was very good. You mentioned pivot and you had a sailboat analogy. So for our industry in general, and you mentioned a lot of items, as far as your attitude and your mindset, which direction would you point the sailboat? Which way should the bow be pointing for improvements to those challenges that you brought up?
I think it goes back to, I keep saying mindset and I keep saying individual, but really that's because that's all I can control. That's all most of us can control. From an industry perspective, I'm more recent in trying to get involved with even Appraisal Institute, and involvement just in some case just means showing up, just being a part, listening. As a result, I'm meeting some cool appraisers. It takes a little bit of a drive, but another appraiser recently told me, he said, it's really intangible. You're spending money, you're spending time, you're pulling away from work, but there are such intangible benefits that he's found from plugging in. So here in our South Carolina chapter, I'm making more of an effort to, hey, let's plug in, let's help out on a small level and see, can I be a part of making things better in some small way. But the improvement, when I say back to the individual, like if you think in your space, in your realm, picking up the phone, go out to local meetings. A big thing, I think, taking courses in person. It's not as convenient, but you're meeting other appraisers. And it's not even, I think people can pick up when they're being, like when they're the product, when your intent is just, how can you benefit me? So I think when you are really interested in just, let me get to know people, let me not, hey, what's your name? Can I get business from you? Is this going to work out? But just, hey, tell me about your background. Tell me something interesting you're working on. And everyone has to eat lunch or a meal at some point, or you're already getting coffee for the day. So just doing it with someone, I think. So the improvement that I've seen personally that I think, again, benefits industry, I've made friends with a couple of local appraisers here recently. I'm trying to make more of an effort because for years I focused on trying to build the business and neglected some of the relationship side just from peers. And what I found is they're sending me work. That was not intended. I would have thought you've got your own work and you've got years worth of contacts, but sometimes they just need someone different or someone with a different skill set, or that's just what they're feeling that day. I said earlier about, people who are sharing knowledge about being more successful. I think of that like, shit, that doesn't mean, you have to start a podcast. I guarantee you, pick up the phone, call a real estate office in your area, and ask if they'd like for you to come in and talk on a topic to their team for their meeting that week, and or a bank for one of their quarterly meetings. If you pitch a topic, this is a great one I heard from a friend down in Charleston, but he said he was going to an appraisal office and pitching how to effectively challenge an appraisal to a room full of realtors. When I first heard that, I thought, what a terrible topic. We're just going to get more phone calls from that. But when you think through it, and you think you're arming them, but really when you think through it, the questions they would call with would be relevant, as opposed to how many questions do you get that are fielded where that doesn't make a difference, or you just don't understand what you're really looking at. Let me take the time to educate you on it. Now, the people you're interacting with are more competent, but also you've put a face to your name. You've established yourself as a subject matter expert. You'll likely get business off of it just because. I had a friend call me up this morning and say, hey, I need a good surveyor out in this area. I have never met the surveyor in my life, but other people have referred me to him. I passed it along for nothing more than your name's out there. So when I think of like improvements to the industry, like I said, I'm newer at like the AI level, but I was at a meeting in Louisville recently, and I think it sounds very hopeful. Like they kept addressing things that I have no context of. So like others who are listening probably have a lot more than I do. So I'm coming into it kind of green. But they're talking about how some of the grievances from the past, how they're really making an effort to help bridge some of those divisions that were there. So as someone with no context, what I see is positive from as far as the machine that's kind of at the top of the in Washington and trying to push and promote things from to benefit appraisers. What I loved was they were outsourcing a lot of roles or functions that traditionally have probably been handled in-house. So when I think it's the difference, and I don't want to misspeak, but the way I understood it was, hey, we could find the next CEO for Appraisal Institute. We could probably, in a room full like a board of directors, figure that out. But instead, let's get an outside firm who specializes in this, who has a very specific process, who's done this for other industries, and find the best suited candidate for it. And I believe the CEO they picked, we met her there, is not even an appraiser, which in a way could be a great strength because there's a totally different skill set that's needed. And I look at that instead of, well, let's just promote from within, or let's just self-appoint. So now when you're talking, is it social media? Is it whatever we're trying to engage, how we're trying to do it? I think it's a promising thing that we're not going to keep this at a certain level that works. When you're smaller and you're starting out, a lot of people have to fill a lot of different roles. But I think the recognition on their end that the size, the place we're at, that there's value in getting experts to help drive what we're doing and let us focus on what we're good at, let them focus on what they're good at, and helping steer from from a higher level. That was pretty promising too. So I have never left a meeting, and I've probably done maybe 5 or 6 in the past couple of years, whether that's meeting with groups of chief appraisers, whether that's industry events, expos, those sorts of things. I have not left an event and not felt more of a push or a call to be better at what I'm doing, whether that's the people that I've met, whether that's the tech that I've seen, presentations that are given, things that I feel like I can come at and bring back to our staff, things that I can incorporate into reports. And so my push for anybody is, it's so much easier to do everything from a distance, again, from a CE perspective, from a contact perspective, but getting your hands dirty, getting out, it costs a little time, it costs a little money. But I think the biggest improvement, it starts with the individuals, and it's getting out there, getting exposed, and like I said, getting your hands dirty and meeting some people. And it challenges you, it elevates you. In a biblical perspective, we hear iron sharpens iron. I think of the same way, where appraisers sharpen each other. When you're around someone, and when there's some guys where you get to know them and you're like, this dude's fun. I'm probably not looking to glean much from him, but it's entertaining. Another one you meet and you say, that guy is so analytical. I'm going to tuck him away and say, I want to, I know he can help challenge me and make me better. Um, and, just people with different gifts. And, I find a lot of value in that. And we benefit from it indirectly, very frequently. And again, I think it's just the push, not being isolated. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Blynn. That was excellent. That was a lot of advice. I really appreciate your mindset with the CTA. The call to action is to get out of the isolation, as you mentioned, to show up. Like, this is not, I'm not paying you to be here. You took your time, very graciously shared your opinion with everybody. So anybody listening or watching this podcast, this is what I'm talking about, right? This is somebody that does what you do, commercial appraiser, doesn't focus on the negative, but yet what can we improve upon, from a client's perspective. So I really appreciate your time today, Blynn. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, did you say this is not paid?
What?
I'm just
I'll send you something. That's
Hey,
fine.
thank you for your time and thank you for what you're doing. Again, it's just a mindset. What you're doing, it's promoting content, and that's what everyone wants right now. That's all people do is scroll. People are looking for content. So anything that's positive, anything that elevates, especially specific to your industry, because that's slim pickings what's out there right now. People are putting out some really good stuff, but in the sea of what's out there, really appreciate you putting this out.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.